Again, good morning, grade 10. We are still in the middle of the discussion. We are now in the biodiversity and evolution, right? So, by Charles Darwin. Okay. Charles Darwin and evolution. Centuries prior to Darwin's theory of evolution, it was believed that organisms and species were unchanging, created perfectly and fixed. Only few scientists questioned this belief. In the early 1800s, French naturalists Jean-Baptiste Lamarck developed a more concrete theory about organic evolution. He stressed two important themes in his work. First, number one, he started that animals to adapt adapt to changes in the environment. Again, number one, he stated that animals adapt to the changes in the environment. Number two, or the second one, bodies and all their different parts make it probable for the organic movement in animals, and that life is organized and structured in an orderly manner. Lamarck's ideas about the relationship of environment and evolution helped set the stage of Darwin's theory of evolution. Again, um, it was because of Jean-Baptiste Lamarck that Darwin actually uh, created his theory of evolution. Okay, this actually is a stepping stone for Charles Darwin to create his theory of evolution. Charles Darwin was born in 1809, the same year that Lamarck published his ideas on evolution. Okay, at the age of 22, Darwin ventured on an expedition collecting thousands of specimens, fossils, and other living animals and plants. Going to the different islands of the South America, he observed the various organisms that were very unique to a specific place, but still shared certain similarities to the other organisms he examined. Okay, so when Darwin actually, in the age of 22, he started now being curious about um the evolution, how these animals evolve, and how these animals also adapt to certain changes in the environment. Later on, he wrote, both in space and time, we seem to be both somewhat near to the great fact that the mystery of mysteries, the first appearance of new beings on Earth. This is now the birth of the theory of evolution. Okay? He thinks about how these animals evolve to a new appearance or new beings on Earth. After 5 years a, of voyage, Darwin strongly questioned the belief that Earth and organisms are unchanging and have been specifically created a few thousand of years prior. He believed that Earth was indeed very old and constantly changing. Can you still hear me? Right then?
Yes.
Okay. Throughout the years, and after writing several essays, Darwin offered a great deal of evidence supporting evolution. Okay, he described his theory or this theory as the theory of natural selection. Okay, he supported or which supported the and provided explanation of how evolution occurs. Okay, evidence of evolution. Let's tackle now some evidences that there is an evolution. Okay, there are some changes in the organisms, both in plants and animals. Darwin perceived that there are similarities of organisms or in organisms, a qualifying or unifying factor that relate a descendant from an ancestor that lived in the distant past. As these descendants spread out and live in different locations, they experience different climates. This led to modifications and adaptations that were necessary for them to survive and propagate. Evolution came about as a way to understand how genes and traits are carried on from one generation to the next. It has become the greatest unifying theory in biology. Darwin's On the Origin of Species paved the way of continuing knowledge and biological research up to date. Most evolutionary evidence are grouped in the following categories. We have this will prove that there is really evolution. Number one is fossil records. Number two is biological evidence or biochemical evidence rather. Number three, it's comparative anatomy and observable events. Let's tackle first fossil records. Darwin collected traces and remains of organisms that lived long ago. Fossils are usually found in sedimentary layers, which means that the more layers, the more evidence there is of different organisms. Okay? So in the fossil records, they collected some traces, okay, of remains or fossilized records that will signify that there are some changes of organism. This is related to the organisms that living in the present. Why is that so? Okay. Biochemical evidence, the nitrogen bases or nitrogen base sequence in the genetic code are same in almost all organisms. Okay. Comparative anatomy. It is seen mainly in biological structure of animals. Most have similar structures but have different functions, meaning to say that these changes or this change in order for the animal to adapt or to survive. This is for the survival of the species. Like for example, this one. Okay, the human and the human's fingers, arms has the same actually structure with the cat's arm, the whale's fin, and the wings of the bat. What do you think is the reason so? Because the origin is the same, but the functions are different. So it changes from time to time in order for the organism to survive. That is one of the best evidence that there is, yes, there is an evolution. Observable events. Changes have been observed in species over time. These observable changes show that evolution is an ongoing process, just like when you're going to observe the colors of the butterflies. Okay, although they have the same species, but if you're going to look at them, they have different colors. At the same time, they may change from time to time. Why? This is for them to survive. Okay, but they belong to the same species. So some of them needs to have a camouflage. Remember that these are the common praise for some predators or many predators. They need to have a camouflage in order for them to survive, to hide. Okay. What is evolution? Okay. Evolution is defined as many changes or any changes or change in the inheritable traits within a certain population across generations. These inheritable traits pertains to physical aspects such as color of petals of flowers, spots on the wings of butterflies, or instinctive behavior like migration patterns of animals, among others. What do you think are the reason, by the way, why animals migrate? Grade 10, any idea?
Loss of habitat.
Number one, yes, correct. No? Loss of habitat. What else?
overpopulation in that certain area.
Correct. Overpopulation of a certain area. What else?
In, that
They
enough
might
food
try to
or
adapt, teacher.
Yes, they might try to adapt. What else? There are a lot of migrating animals like birds, okay? There are a lot of migrating birds. Dove, for example, they migrate, right? All of your answers are correct, actually. Okay? They might have their habitat was being destroyed, number one. Number two, it may be that they need to adapt to certain changes in the environment. Or it could be that there is an overpopulation in the area. Yes, there is a big possibility. Aside from that also, birds and other animals migrate in order to survive for food. Okay? Especially if the area is in winter. Okay? Too much cold can actually kill them. So, in order for them to survive, they need to what? Migrate to some countries that has a warm climate and a lot of food. That is why you can usually see doves, a lot of doves here. These doves are not local. They came from other countries. They came here or they come here in order to survive for food because we have a lot of food here. At the same time, our temperature is favorable for them to survive. Right? Shall we continue? DNA plays an important role in the evolution process. Changes in the genetic code affect the characteristic and traits in the succeeding generations. As these certain traits are manifested and are carried on in the next generations, evolution can be observed. Correct. Okay. For example, sir, how can we observe that one? Okay. You need to think about your past ancestors. Okay. You try to observe them compared today. Okay, the food that they eat. Okay, the color of their skin. From time to time, because of the climatic changes, because of the environmental factors, we also change. Okay, we also adapt to the certain changes. Because if we will not adapt, we eventually die. Direct to the point. Natural selection. Okay. Throughout the expedition, Darwin recognized that all species, by the way, do you have any questions so far? Please raise your questions.
none so far.
Okay. Darwin recognized that all species produce quite a number of offspring. He reasoned that organisms processing adaptive characteristics have a better chance to survive and reproduce. Okay? Compared to the individuals who do not have such characteristics. Darwin sought the basic and central mechanism of evolution of reproduction in a process called natural selection. Okay? The theory of natural selection is actually happening until now. Okay, what is really happening is that the weak eventually die, replacing the stronger ones, even in the COVID situation. Okay, that is why the government protected the younger ones at the same time the senior citizens. That's the reason why. Okay, again, that the natural selection is happening now. This is now the elimination of the weak and the continuation of the strong. Those who cannot adapt eventually die. He perceives that this process of selection is unequal in terms of success in reproduction. The environment plays a role in filtering changes and variations in traits. Are you still with me?
Yes.
Okay. Favored traits are being expressed compared to unfavored traits, which become less and unlikely to survive and leave progeny or the offspring, results in a gradual change in the characteristic of population of organisms, with the favored traits accumulating and carried over to the next generations. Natural selection can be summed up through the famous line or the famous Filipino line, matira ang matibay. So, again, those strong will continue its generation, the weak will be eliminated or eventually die. By studying natural selection, Darwin found Darwin found convincing evidence for his ideas in the result of artificial selection. Okay? What is artificial selection then? Artificial selection is the selective breeding of domesticated plants and animals with desirable characteristic, just like when you have your, like for example, I have my dog. My dog is a golden retriever. Okay? So I need to breed only golden retriever. That's artificial selection. I don't want him to paired in with a different breed. Although they have the same species, but it has a different breed. That is actually selective breeding or artificial selection. Like for example, if you have Shih Tzu, or you want to breed your dog with a Shih Tzu, that is artificial selection. Or you want to breed your dog Shih Tzu to Poodle. Okay, you created another breed. That is selective breeding again. Okay, Shipu and other plants. Like for example, for plants, you need to breed a bigger potato for your potato price. Okay, what else? You're creating a GMO. Are you familiar with GMO?
No.
No, not really.
Okay, GMO stands for genetically modified organisms, just like your French fries is. Your French fries is a GMO. It is artificial, created artificially through artificial selection. Okay, it has a different genes compared to an ordinary potato.
But sure, it is that contribute to making it unhealthy?
Yes, sometimes. Okay, because creating them needs a lot of chemicals. Yes, it could be. It could be also a cause for cancer or carcinogen. There are some harmful effects and there are some also benefits that we can get out from the GMOs. There are some GMOs actually created for humans consumption. Like for example, um, a bacteria that will kill another bacteria. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
These are called what?
Probiotics? I don't know.
Antibiotics.
Antib
Ay, okay.
an-
Antibacterial.
Antibiotics. Your antibiotics created artificially. Okay? It was because of Dr. Fleming, Alexander Fleming, that she created the antibiotics first. Okay? Because he observed that this species of bacteria kills another bacteria. And he actually breed those species to create different levels of antibiotics. The penicillium or penicillin, that's the first antibiotic. See, there are a lot of possibilities. There are a lot also purpose of artificial selection. Like for example, in plants, you can actually have your farming faster results, faster what? Faster harvest of your plants, your veggies, because of artificial selection. Make it more faster. Okay. So these are the effects. Do you have any questions so far?
None so far.
All right.
No, for
Let's
me.
move forward. This means that certain qualities and traits are magnified to show the desired characteristics, and discouraging breeding of individuals with undesirable characteristics. Okay, you remove, like for example, I don't want that dog because the dog has a a characteristic of Aspin or Asong Pinoy. Okay, so I don't want that dog to breed in my dog because my dog is a chow chow, for example. So you are now removing the undesirable characteristic or discouraging the breeding of individuals with undesirable characteristic. So you are just thinking about um what could be the you're thinking about the bests for that certain breed, that is artificial breeding or artificial selection. Human therefore play a role of the environment by choosing organisms to get who get to reproduce. Okay, we are actually controlling it. Okay, artificially, we are considered now as the environment for these species of animals and plants. See, because according to Charles Darwin, that the theory of natural selection plays a vital role. The theory of natural selection has an environment that, and this environment plays a vital role in um, the succession of the particular species, plants and animals. Therefore, in artificial selection, we are considered as the environment, which is very has a vital role in continuation or in the continuation of the certain species of plants and animals. Okay? Farmers and breeders have, have been long using the idea of artificial selection, even before Darwin. We see this evidence of artificial selection in food you eat. For example, the corn have been staple food throughout the years. Ancient farmers took the first step in domesticating corn by choosing kernels. Kernels, do you know kernels? In
Corn.
Yes.
the lugar sa mais ba? Those are kernels, named kernels. They noticed that the corn plants grow the same. Some may have kernels that tasted better or were easier to grind, while others grow much taller than the rest. Okay? This is during before, the time of Charles Darwin. These farmers then chose the kernels with desirable characteristics and planted them. The process produced corns that were larger, had more kernels rows, and generally more useful. Today, corn goes through a series of selection that consider the following criteria. Number one, ability to grow in different types of soil or climatic conditions. Number two, kernel size. Number three, resistance to pests. Because these plants, um, sometimes they attack by the pests. That's why they created also plants that will resist the pests and many more. Okay, genetic variation is extensive in most populations. It is defined as the difference between cells, individual organisms, and or groups of organisms of many species cause their genotypic and phenotypic variations. Variation may be expressed largely in physical appearance, but can also be observed in behavior, metabolism, or mode of reproduction. Again, this variation, genotypic and phenotypic. When you say genotypic, it is in the genes. Okay, just like for example, when you are when you are tall, you have the genes for tall expressed because tall is a, a dominant gene among short, right? But it doesn't mean that if you are tall, you are not carrying the genes for short. You might be carrying also the genes for short. That is under genotypic. Okay, you are actually tall, you have the genes for tall because it is expressed in you, but you might be carrying the genes for short. That is genotypic. How about phenotypic variation? Phenotypic, it means to say that it is observable. Like for example, if you are tall, yes, that is the phenotypic variation. You are tall, you are short. Okay, you have a long hair with brown hair. Like for example, color of the eyes is brown, color of the eyes is blue. So those are phenotypic variation. Okay? This variation may be expressed largely in physical appearance but also be observed in behavior, metabolism, or mode of reproduction. Do you have questions so far?
None so far.
And so far.
Okay, let's continue. However, not all variation can be passed on to the offspring. Results of the phenotypes are related to the interaction of genotype with its environment, which can be highly influential. Again, however, not all variation can be passed on to the offspring. Dili tanan variations can be passed on to the offspring. Okay? Results of the phenotype or the physical traits are related to the interaction of the genotype with its environment, which can be highly influential. Like for example, ballet training improves your ability to perform different dance routines, but this does not necessarily mean that you will pass your environmentally produced skills or your muscle memory to your offspring. It cannot be, okay, because this is actually learned. Okay, when you speak of variation in terms of natural selection, we look at genetic component. Okay, again, your body training, you cannot pass it on to your offspring simply because, or your muscle memory, you cannot pass it on because this is actually what? This is actually learned through your environment. Okay? Factors that affect genetic variation can be linked to mutation, which is the permanent change in the chemical structure of a gene. Mutations occurs in the body cells mostly, but is lost when the individuals die. Okay. Only the mutation in cells that produce gametes. Why? Because there are two types of um, chromosomes there in your body. We have autosomes and gonosomes. Autosomes carry no your physical traits or characteristics. Okay? While gonosomes creates or carried your what? Gametes. It could be male or female. So the mutations in the cells that produce gametes can be passed on to the offspring and potentially affect the population's gene pool. Okay? Speciation. Speciation is the evolutionary process in which new species arise. It is the process wherein a group of one species will acquire new characteristics and eventually make an entire new species. Each time speciation occurs, biologically biodiversity increase or biological biodiversity increase or increases. Let's tackle more about speciation by next meeting because we're running out of time. I think we still have 6 minutes left. Do you have any questions so far with the this what we had discussed a while ago? That
And
None
so
so
far,
far.
it's understandable, sir.
all right? That's good. Hopefully we can finish the whole module by next meeting and continue with our activities because we have a lot of activities to do and your periodical tests, the third periodical test is fast approaching, right? If you have questions, you can always raise it in the class, raise it in RGC, or send me a private message in order for me to assist you with your concerns and with your questions. I think that will be all for today, grade 10. Thank you for your participation. Have a nice day, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Have a nice day as well.